Unions are yet to sign the public sector wage agreement.
Minister of Public Service and Administration Ayanda Dlodlo was not at a scheduled briefing earlier this afternoon. Her department saying the majority of unions have accepted government's latest offer, at least in principle.
But not all members of the bargaining council are on board with the wage proposal, with the Federation of Unions of South Africa calling for more time to consult with members. Well, for more on this, we're joined by the Public Service and Administration Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo. Good evening, Minister. Thanks very much for coming through. Well, let's start with that. We have a couple of statements here from the National Union of Public Service and Allied Workers, as well as Hospesa, both rejecting the wage offer. What's the status? Government has tabled its final offer.
Well, our offer was tabled on the 3rd of May. None of the unions have come back to say they're rejecting the wage offer. What we know is that they are still consulting with their members. But more than that, I really cannot go into the modalities and the content of the agreement itself, because there is a protocol within the chamber between government and labor that we will not speak about these matters publicly through the media until such time that all of us are comfortable in dealing with these matters. But I am very confident that we will find one another in this process.
Well, I mean, they seem to suggest that government has jumped the gun, and both these statements are actually very, very strongly worded. You have Hospesa, for example, saying that there was a VAT increase, partly due to poor management and corruption at state-owned enterprises, and accusing government of being hypocritical to plead poverty. You have the National Union of Public Service and Allied Workers saying they're not going to sign an agreement which once again takes away the members' rights to housing allowance, for example.
It's a bit disingenuous, Vuyo, to say that we have jumped the gun. I think it was on Friday where the bargaining council itself issued a statement. It was all over Twitter. It made its way into mainstream media. So we have not jumped the gun in any way. We truly believed, based on statements that had been made, that today we would see a signature appended by all involved. But I must say that we are sensitive to the fact that consultation has to be as wide as possible. Everybody needs to come on board, and nobody must come out of this process feeling that they were shortchanged. Of course, negotiations are about giving and taking. So you win some, you lose some. But it is a bit disingenuous to say we jumped the gun. We did not.
But you're confident we're going to find a resolution to that?
We have to. We really have to. I don't think it would be right for us right now to be digging our heels on anything. We just need to understand that the process needs to take its course, and I'm confident that we will find one another.
Well, let's go to other issues that, of course, are your responsibility. One of the big announcements that were made by the President in his maiden State of the Nation address was the restructuring of the government to enhance service delivery and remove, superfluous functions and structures, as you yourself called them in your budget speech. What is the process? Has work started? Where are we? Are the timelines?
I'm not sure about the timelines with respect to implementation, because that would really fall squarely in the ambit of the President's prerogative. But in terms of work that needs to be done for the President to be able to take informed decision, that falls squarely within my ambit. What we have done as a department is that we've already developed a project plan with regards to the Center of Government program, which then will speak to many issues, including the macro configuration of the state. And when you of government, when you talk about the macro configuration of government, you will be looking at quite a number of issues. Aligning mandates, ensuring that there's a streamlined approach towards service delivery, which would mean that the clusters would have to be reconfigured in a different way. The planning processes of government and the reporting processes of government will be informed by the macro configuration of government.
So what are we talking about? Is everything open for a review and for whatever changes that people may come up with? In other words, there are no areas where you say you're not going to touch this. If, for example, there's a need to, let's say, halve the number of departments, is that on the table?
I think other things we cannot touch because of legislation. But again, that doesn't mean we cannot amend legislation to meet the requirements of a modern government, a modern society that needs a government that is properly streamlined for functionality. Now, whether departments will be lessened or not, I think is a no-brainer. We have too many departments in a country of about 53 million in population, but also I don't think the fiscus can carry this many number of departments. What we need to do is, as we configure, we need to make sure that departments still retain their legislative powers, but also ensure that mandates are streamlined and linked to the mandates that speak to one another, so to speak. For instance, I'll just give as a broad example, communications and telecommunications. And I'm not saying that's what is going to happen. I'm just giving that as an example. And the whole economics cluster, why would we have so many departments instead of having one ministry, probably with a few departments? But those are the modalities that the president will have to look at. We will present to him a study that we would have undertaken, and this work has started, by the way. We're almost at completion stage, but together working with the presidency, of course. But all of that really depends on the speed at which the decisions are taken, both by cabinet and also by the president.
What is the government's attitude towards the numbers of public servants you have, employ?
You know, Vuyo, I'm on record as saying we have not done a study to determine whether the public service is bloated or not. And I'd be loath to say we have a bloated public service where I have no evidence to support my statement. What I can say is that there is a need to reconfigure, realign, and right-size. And that in itself does not mean that we will retrench or not retrench people. At this stage, I'm not sure what is going to happen, but what I know for a fact is we need to right-size, and right-sizing does not necessarily mean getting rid of people, but also the redeployment of public servants based on their competence, aligning that with the mandates of various departments.
Minister, we're going to leave it there for this evening. Thank you very much for coming through, the Minister responsible for Public Service and Administration.